Good morning. It's Friday, January 3rd, 2025, and I'm your host, Attorney Benjamin Sanchez, here for another episode of Morning Cup. In today's episode, I'm going to briefly discuss what to do or what the legalities are when an event doesn't happen, whether it's rescheduled or canceled, and you have a ticket to that event. So stay tuned and enjoy the conversation. What got me thinking about this particular topic at this time was what happened in New Orleans for the bowl game that was played yesterday. As you know, the bowl game was supposed to be played on Wednesday, January 1st. However, due to the horrific scene the night before where the person drove past barricades and drove and killed people, the officials at the bowl game decided to reschedule the bowl game for a day later. And so that got me thinking, what do people do in that situation? Some people had flights to get back on, they had hotels that they had planned to get out of. There were all sorts of things that could happen as a result of a ticket or an event being rescheduled. And in fact, in my own life, I've had this happen in the past 5 years. In 2019, the legendary rock band Who was coming into town, into Houston, Texas, and they appeared at the Toyota Center in downtown. However, that night, Roger Daltrey, the lead singer, had trouble singing. He blamed it on the pollen in the dust and stuff in the air, and so after about 3 or 4 songs, the band stopped, went off stage, and then after a few minutes, Pete Townsend came on and apologized to everybody and said that Roger just wasn't up to singing because of the air quality of Houston, and that they were going to have to reschedule the show. Now, obviously, there were a lot of disappointed people, but then immediately, the question came, okay, well, what happens? How do people get through this? And I think, this week, people were wondering, okay, well, what are my rights when it comes to, yes, I feel sorry about the event, but what are my rights when it comes to having a ticket change? And so the basic fundamentals, and again, these morning cups are not meant to cover, a very deep dive into the subjects that I discussed, but to kind of give you a 30,000-foot view. If an event is rescheduled, then you don't get your money back. Generally speaking, now, generally speaking, you will just simply get credit for the new date. Now, some again, as I spoke about yesterday, businesses who try to do goodwill will try to accommodate people who just can't go for whatever reasons. They made special plans or whatever. Generally speaking, when you buy a ticket and if there's some unforeseen circumstance, then you get to use that ticket for a new date. If the event is canceled, then you are entitled to a refund up to a point. And this is where it gets a little tricky because there may be acts of God, natural disasters or whatever, where simply the event is canceled due to events beyond the promoter's control. And so sometimes there may not be a refund for a ticket for an event that gets canceled. I do believe personally that that's a breach of contract and that you can go after them. However, in the United States, an act of God is considered a contractual defense to performance of a contract. So a tornado, a hurricane, or whatever, those may be acts of God. And the question is going to be whether or not, a terroristic event such as in New Orleans, whether that's considered an act of God. And under most U.S. law, that is not considered a natural consequence, right? That is a man-made thing. Yes, it may be beyond the event's control. Technically, if you think about it, the bowl game could have gone forward on Wednesday, but out of respect for the tragedy and making sure that security was tight when the bowl game happened. The event and the bowl game officials decided to move that to another event. Now, going back to my own experience with this, the Who, they didn't have an event for a while, replanned, right? So the idea was that they were going to continue on their tour, and at some point they would come back to Houston, come back to the Toyota Center, and then perform, and the people who had that original ticket could go back in. What ultimately happened, however, was that the Who did come back to Houston, but they used a different venue. So for those of you local, they went to the Cynthia Woods Mental Pavilion instead of coming back to the Toyota Center. Those are two different promotions. Those are two different companies that own those different venues. And so ultimately the tickets had to be refunded to everyone instead of just exchanged, because the Toyota Center was no longer going to host the rescheduled event. And then you, as a ticket holder, had to then go purchase the new ticket at Cynthia Woods Mental Pavilion because it was a new promoter and new company. So they couldn't just swap it out for location because there were different companies. And while that was disappointing, ultimately the legalities of that were that the customer was entitled to a refund, but not to an automatic seat at the new event. And so if you wanted to get a seat at the new event, you had to purchase tickets just like everyone else. And so generally speaking, if there's an act of God, there may be contractual defense to having to refund money. But generally speaking, if you get a rescheduled event, you're entitled to use that ticket and go to the new event showing proof of that ticket. You can sometimes get a refund. If the event gets canceled, then you can get that. Now, the other brief topic I want to mention is ticket insurance. What is ticket insurance for? Ticket insurance is usually not meant to cover what happens on the other side. It's usually meant to cover what happens in your life in case you can't go. So if for some reason an event gets canceled or rescheduled and you have ticket insurance, you may be able to get the cost of the hotel. You may be able to get the cost of having to schedule a new flight, right? It's there to cover you, or if you can't go, let's just say your schedule is such that you can't go. Most ticket insurance will cover the event that you can't go just in case. And you would think that, well, do the insurance companies make any money off of that? Well, yes, because most people don't actually use their ticket insurance once they buy it. So ticket insurance is separately. You have to look at the terms of the ticket insurance. Most of the time, it's there to cover what happens in your life, not as a result of what happens with the actual event. If you have any questions, you can give us a call, 713-780-7745. Thank you for joining me for another edition of Morning Cup. I hope to bring you future editions and hope you like this short form content as we start 2025. Thank you and have a great day.